I don't scare easily. Even as a kid, I was never the type to jump at ghost stories or let my imagination run wild in the dark. I was logical, practical, the kind of person who believed every strange noise had a reasonable explanation. At least, I used to be. But what I saw that night, what I heard, what I felt, still lingers in my mind, replaying in nightmares and quiet moments alike. It left me with a fear I can't shake. And it all happened 3 months ago. It was a Thursday, and my shift at the hotel had been brutal. I work as a line cook, and it's the kind of job that drains the life out of you. Long hours, constant pressure, standing on your feet until they feel like they might snap in half. That day had been worse than usual. The kitchen was swamped, the orders endless, and I barely had time to breathe between prepping dishes and dodging sharp words from my stressed-out head chef. By the time I clocked out, I felt hollowed out, running on fumes. I hadn't even realized it had been raining all day until I stepped outside. The street was flooded, reflecting the dim glow of streetlights, and the distant honking of standstill traffic told me I was in for a long ride home. In my country, rain like this always meant disaster, buses crawling through knee-deep water, cars stalled in the middle of intersections. I sighed, adjusting the strap of my waterproof backpack. It held my essentials, phone, wallet, a spare shirt, my house key, and my knife set from work. I never went anywhere without my knives. I hopped onto the first bus I could, settling into a window seat. The vehicle inched forward at a painfully slow pace, and before long, I gave up on staying awake. I drifted in and out of sleep as the rain hammered against the windows, the sound lulling me into an uneasy slumber. When I woke up, it was midnight. The bus had barely moved. Groggy, I checked my surroundings and realized I was close enough to home to make the rest of the journey on foot. I had taken this route 100 times before. It wasn't ideal in this weather, but it was better than waiting another hour in a bus that wasn't going anywhere. I signaled the driver, stepped off, and immediately felt the cold rain soak through my clothes. I shoved my phone and wallet deeper into my backpack, tightening the straps. The church parking lot, my usual shortcut, was just ahead. It wasn't well lit, but it was the fastest way home. The gate was chained shut like it always was after dark. No problem. I had climbed over it before, and the security guard never minded. Except tonight, the guard was gone. I hesitated, scanning the empty lot. No flashlight, no movement, just the soft glow of houses far in the distance and the heavy drumming of rain. I told myself he was probably inside the church, keeping dry. Then, I climbed over the gate. The water in the parking lot was worse than I expected, knee-deep, dark, and rippling with every raindrop. It was like wading through a flooded swimming pool. And then, just as I reached the middle of the lot, I heard it. A strange splashing sound. I stopped, turning toward the far left corner. Through the darkness, barely illuminated by the distant lights, I saw a figure. A woman. She was sitting in the water, hunched forward, her arms thrashing violently, splashing as if she were trying to fight the flood itself. Her grunts, low and guttural, cut through the sound of the rain. I stood frozen, watching her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't calling for help. She was just hitting the water, over and over. A part of me wanted to walk the other way, but another part, maybe out of some misplaced sense of duty, felt like I should ask if she needed help. But before I could say a word, I realized something. Even though she was furiously splashing, the water around her remained completely still, like she wasn't really there at all. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to move, stepping past her at a distance. I didn't want to get too close. Something about her felt wrong. I reached the dirt road, barely able to see where I was going. The mud sucked at my shoes, making each step a struggle. And then, a splash. Right behind me. I turned my head, my breath catching in my throat. The woman was lying face down in the water, unmoving. A sick feeling spread through my chest. Was she drowning? Had she passed out? I hesitated. I should help her. But before I could take a step, she moved. Her head lifted. Her hair was soaked, clinging to her face. But even in the darkness, I could tell she was looking directly at me. Then, slowly, deliberately, she got onto her hands and feet. Not the way a person normally stands up. Her hands lingered on the ground, her spine arching unnaturally. And then, she started crawling toward me. My body locked up. Something about the way she moved, jerky, unnatural, inhuman, made my skin crawl. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't work. My brain screamed at me to reach for my knife, but I was too afraid to move. And then she made a sound. A horrible, choking, pig-like squeal. That was all it took. I bolted. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, the rain blurring my vision, my shoes slipping in the mud. Behind me, I could hear her, the splashing of water, the heavy thuds of her hands and feet slamming against the ground. And worst of all, her ragged, coughing breath, too close. Too close. Tears burned in my eyes as I sprinted toward home, barely able to see through the darkness. I didn't dare look back. If I did, I knew I would see her gaining on me. I could feel it. My house was so close now. I pushed myself harder, my lungs screaming, my body begging me to stop. Finally, I reached my doorstep. I tore my backpack open, fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking violently. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut behind me. I collapsed against it, my chest heaving, my entire body trembling. Silence. I sat there, waiting, expecting to hear her scratching at the door, to see her shadow through the window. But nothing came. When my brother found me, I was still sitting there, too shaken to move, my clothes soaked through. I never saw her again. But to this day, I can't walk alone at night without glancing over my shoulder. And when it rains, I still hear the splashes behind me. I grew up surrounded by the forest. My family's home sat on the outskirts of a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where the nights were quiet, peaceful, or at least they used to be. As a kid, the woods were my playground. I knew every path, every hidden stream, every shortcut through the dense trees. My father had taught me how to navigate the wild, how to listen, how to recognize animal tracks, how to respect the land. For 18 years, I never saw anyone else in those woods. Then, the summer after my first year of university, that changed. And I have never gone back since. It was late July when I returned home for the summer, eager to fall back into old routines. One of my favorite pastimes was a long walk through the woods, following a path that led from a small man-made lake near our house, through the trees, alongside a narrow stream, all the way to the river miles away. I had done it 100 times, but never in the rain. That morning, the sky was gray and heavy, the smell of damp earth thick in the air. I set off early, enjoying the familiar solitude, the rhythmic sound of water rushing over rocks. An hour into my walk, I stopped by the stream to cool my hands in the water. That's when I heard it. A bell. Far away. Distant, but clear. A single ring, then another. The sound was deep, deliberate, too heavy to be the small collar bell of a lost dog. I frowned, lifting my head. The bell rang again. I turned toward the sound, curiosity overriding caution. Was someone out here? A hunter, maybe? I started moving toward it. But as I did, the bell began to ring faster. I stopped, and so did the ringing. A deep unease settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I listened, holding my breath. But now, there was only silence. Not even the birds were singing. I shook off the feeling and turned back toward my path, chalking it up to my imagination. Then, just a few minutes later, I found it. A badger. Its body lay perfectly still, sprawled out beside the stream. Its fur was slick from the rain, but what made my breath hitch in my throat was the way it had been decapitated. Cleanly, with precision, and it was fresh. The body was limp, the wound not yet dried out. Something had done this. Recently, and suddenly, I knew I wasn't alone. I left the woods quickly that day, my unease growing with every step. I tried to shake it off, but something about that morning stayed with me. The bell, the silence, the badger's severed head, none of it made sense. A week passed, and then, for some reason I still can't explain, I went back. It was evening this time. A storm had rolled in earlier that afternoon, leaving the air cold and damp, the smell of rain lingering. I took the same path, my feet crunching over wet leaves. The woods felt different after dark, deeper, quieter, full of unseen things. But I told myself I was being ridiculous. Then, as I neared the stream, my stomach twisted into a cold knot. Because the badger was still there. But now, it had been hung from a tree, suspended by a twine noose, its head tied to its front paws. Like an offering, the stench of rot filled my nose, thick and nauseating. Flies buzzed in the humid air. I stumbled back, while rising in my throat. My mind raced. Someone had done this. Someone had been here, in these woods, after me, and they had left this for me to find. I turned to leave. Then I heard it. The bell. Closer this time. The sound echoed through the trees, deliberate and slow. I froze, My pulse hammered in my ears. Then, the bell rang again, and I realized something. It wasn't coming from one place anymore. It was moving, and it was coming toward me. I ran. I didn't care about the mud, the branches whipping against my arms, the uneven ground beneath my feet. I just ran. I could still hear the bell, intermittent, creeping through the trees, following me. Then, up ahead, I saw it, the path. Relief surged through me. If I could just reach it, I'd be closer to home, closer to safety. But before I could, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Footsteps, and they weren't mine. I forced myself to look over my shoulder, and that's when I saw him, a tall figure at the very edge of the clearing, standing completely still, watching me. In his hands, he held something small and metal, a bell, and he was ringing it, slowly, deliberately. His face was obscured by the shadows, but I knew he was staring at me. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I had never felt before. I was prey. I don't know how I made it out. All I remember is sprinting so fast my lungs burned, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands scraped raw from the branches I pushed aside. I heard my dad's voice calling my name in the distance. He was waiting for me at the trailhead, just as I had begged him to. I didn't stop until I practically collapsed into him. And even then, even when I was finally safe, I could still hear the bell ringing in my head. My dad went back with a few other men the next day. They found the badger's rotting carcass still hanging in the trees. But they didn't find the man, or the bell. I never set foot in those woods again. And to this day, when I hear the sound of metal chiming softly in the wind, a bell on a shop door, a wind chime on a neighbor's porch, I feel my chest tighten, and I wonder if, somewhere deep in those woods, in the fading light of dusk, he is still waiting. Exploring abandoned buildings had always been a thrill for my friends and me. We weren't reckless. We never broke anything, never vandalized, never stole. We just had a fascination with forgotten places, the eerie silence of buildings left behind, the feeling that we were stepping into a moment frozen in time. That's why, when we heard about the old asylum, we knew we had to check it out. It was a stormy night, cold rain hammering against the windshield as we drove toward the outskirts of town. The asylum had been closed for years, standing alone in the woods like some decayed monument to the past. But as we pulled up to the rusted gate, I felt something I had never felt before on one of our adventures. A deep, sinking feeling in my gut. Something about this place felt wrong. And I wished to God we had turned back. There were 5 of us, me, Dylan, Mark, Rachel, and Leah. We climbed over the gate, the rain soaking our jackets as we made our way through the overgrown courtyard. The building loomed ahead, its windows shattered, vines creeping along the crumbling walls. "Damn," Dylan whispered. "This place is massive." Mark grinned, already pulling out his flashlight. "Let's see what's inside." We found a broken window and climbed through, our feet crunching on shattered glass. Inside, the air was heavy, damp, stale, thick with the scent of mold and decay. The long hallways stretched into darkness, lined with peeling wallpaper and rusted gurneys. Old patient rooms stood open, their beds still made, as if waiting for people who were never coming back. And then there was the daycare. We found it on the 2nd floor, tucked away at the end of a long hallway. The room was oddly intact, tiny chairs and tables still arranged in neat rows, dust-covered toys scattered across the floor. A faded alphabet chart clung to the peeling walls. But something felt off. Rachel shivered. Why does it feel like people were just here? Leah knelt by an old toy train, running a finger over its rusted surface. "This place is giving me serious creeps." Mark, ever the fearless one, grinned. "Relax. It's just a bunch of old junk." Then Dylan spoke. "Guys." His voice was low, tense. "Do you smell that?" We fell silent. Then I caught it, a stench so strong it made my stomach turn. Rot. Something was rotting. And it wasn't just old wood or mildew. It was something worse. The smell led us to a nearby room, its door half open. Mark nudged it with his foot, and it swung wide. We all froze. Lying in the middle of the floor was a dead deer. Its body was freshly gutted, its intestines spilling onto the cracked tiles. A sharp gasp escaped Leah. Rachel turned away, gagging. "What the hell?" Dylan whispered. My blood ran cold. This wasn't the work of an animal. Someone had done this. And recently, a floorboard creaked. We whipped around, but the hallway was empty. Only the sound of rain against the broken windows filled the silence. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned back to the deer, noticing something I hadn't before. Teeth marks. Large, human-like bite marks along its ribs. My mouth went dry. We need to go. Now. Dylan didn't argue. He was already backing toward the door. Leah grabbed Rachel's arm, pulling her away from the carcass. But then, a whisper. Low. Croaking. Coming from the hallway. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Rachel screamed. A man stepped into the doorway. His clothes were filthy, torn, his skin smeared with something dark. His eyes were wide, gleaming in the dim light, his lips pulled into a grin smeared with fresh blood. My entire body locked up. Then he spoke. You guys here for the feast? We ran. All of us. Rachel was the first out of the room, sobbing, tripping over her own feet as she scrambled down the hallway. Dylan grabbed Leah's wrist, dragging her behind him. I could hear the man's laughter echoing behind us, low, rasping, bubbling with excitement. I risked a glance back. He was following us. Not running, not screaming, just walking, his head twitching, his grin never fading. The metal door to the stairwell was just ahead. Mark reached it first, slamming his weight into it. It didn't budge. Come on, come on, Dylan shouted, pounding against the rusted metal. The footsteps behind us grew faster, closer. Then, the door gave way. We tumbled down the stairs, hitting the concrete floor hard. But there was no time to stop. The exit was just ahead, just one more door. Slam. Rachel and Leah burst outside first. I was right behind them. Dylan and Mark stumbled out next. And the door slammed shut behind us. I turned, gasping, and saw his face through the small wire-reinforced window. He was just standing there, on the other side of the door, watching, grinning. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and licked the blood from his fingers. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. None of us spoke. We just sat there, soaked in rain and sweat, breathing hard, shaking. Eventually, Dylan pulled out his phone and started looking up old records of the asylum. Then, he found it. An article from 5 years ago. A man had escaped from a psychiatric hospital 2 towns over. A man who had been caught eating the remains of small animals behind a gas station. The police had never found him. I don't know if that was him. I don't know if he had been living in that asylum, surviving off whatever he could catch. I don't want to know. All I do know is that I will never set foot in that place again. And sometimes, when I lie awake at night, I swear I can still hear it. That low, rasping voice. You guys here for the feast? Late-night drives had always been our thing. For as long as we'd been together, my girlfriend, Emily, and I had loved driving through the countryside, taking random roads just to see where they led. There was something peaceful about it. The hum of the car, the quiet roads, the way the world seemed emptier in the rain. It never felt dangerous. Not until that night. It was a stormy evening, the kind where the rain came in sheets, making the world beyond the windshield a blurry mess. We hadn't planned on going out, but we were both restless, so we decided to take a quick drive before heading home. The town roads were too familiar, too boring, so we veered off onto an old country road, one neither of us had ever taken before. It wound through dense forest, twisting and turning, barely wide enough for 2 cars. The headlights illuminated walls of trees on either side, their branches swaying violently in the wind. Emily shivered. This place is creepy. I smirked. That's what makes it fun. She rolled her eyes but smiled, leaning back in her seat. Yeah, just don't get us lost. I wish that had been the worst of our problems. We drove for nearly half an hour, the rain never letting up. The road became rougher, potholes forming deep puddles, the trees growing thicker, pressing in around us. And then, up ahead, we saw it. A house. Deep in the woods, just off the road. It was old, rotting, its roof sagging under years of neglect. The front porch was cluttered with junk, rusted car parts, broken furniture, shattered glass. But the worst part? The cats. At least a dozen of them sat in the yard, completely still, their glowing eyes reflecting the headlights. Just watching us. Emily tensed beside me. Let's turn around. I nodded. Something about this place felt wrong. I eased my foot onto the gas, ready to keep driving. Then a rock hit the windshield. Hard. The crack spidered across the glass instantly, making Emily scream. I slammed on the brakes, my pulse spiking. What the hell? Before I could finish, something moved in the darkness. A figure stepped out from behind the house. A man. Tall, bearded, dressed in filthy overalls. In his hands, he held a shovel, and he was walking toward us. I threw the car into reverse, my hands shaking on the wheel. Then, from the porch, another figure emerged. A woman, tall, thin, her face hidden by long, wet hair. Her arms hung limply at her sides, and in the dim light, I could see something dark smeared on her hands. She didn't move. She just stood there, staring. Emily grabbed my arm. Drive. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. I hit the gas, the tires skidding on the wet road as we sped past the house. The bearded man stood in the middle of the road, his expression blank, his grip tightening on the shovel as we passed. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror? The woman on the porch, raising one hand to wave. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Emily whispered, "They threw that rock at US." I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles white. "I know. They wanted us to stop." I nodded. I didn't want to admit what I was thinking, but I knew she was right. That house, those people, they had been waiting for someone to stop, and we had almost been stupid enough to do it. But the worst part? It wasn't over. Because in the distance, headlights appeared, and they were getting closer. For a split second, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just another car. Maybe it was nothing. Then, the headlights sped up. Emily gasped. "They're following us." I pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The car lurched forward, the tires skidding on the rain-soaked road. The headlights behind us matched our speed. Then, they got closer. Too close. They were chasing us. "Shit, shit, shit," I muttered, my mind racing. "Where's the main road?" "I don't know." Emily was gripping the seat, her breath coming in panicked gasps. The truck behind us swerved left, then right, its high beams flooding the car with blinding light. Then, they sped up and rammed the back of our car. Emily screamed. I struggled to keep the wheel steady, the car jerking violently from the impact. "They're trying to run us off the road," she sobbed. I clenched my jaw. Not gonna happen. I spotted a turn up ahead, a narrow gravel path cutting through the trees. Without thinking, I yanked the wheel and swerved onto it. The car skidded, gravel flying beneath the tires. But we made it. And when I looked back, the truck didn't follow. It just sat there, idling at the turnoff, its headlights glowing like eyes in the dark. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they turned around and drove back toward the house. We didn't stop until we reached the nearest gas station, pulling into the brightly lit lot like it was a lifeline. Emily was shaking, her hands still gripping her seatbelt. I felt like I might throw up. We sat there, watching the road, half expecting to see those headlights again. But they never came. And after an hour of sitting in silence, we finally worked up the courage to drive home. We never reported it. What would we even say? That a couple of weirdos threw a rock at US and chased us down a back road? And honestly, we didn't want to go back. But some nights, when I'm alone, I think about that house. The cats, watching without blinking. The woman, standing in the rain, waving as we drove away. The truck that followed us, forcing us to flee for our lives. And I wonder, what would have happened if we had stopped? I don't think we would have ever left that house. And I don't think they were planning to let us. It was the kind of rain that swallowed the world. Thick sheets of it hammered against my windshield, drowning the wipers in endless waves of water. The road was a blur, long, winding, cutting through the forest like a scar. My headlights barely cut through the darkness, and the steady thunk-thunk of the rain hitting the roof made me feel like I was driving through the bottom of the ocean. I was coming back from my sister's house, a 4-hour drive through mostly empty roads and open countryside. I'd made the trip dozens of times before. It never felt unsafe. Until that night. It was just after midnight when I first saw him. I had just passed mile marker 147, a rusted old sign barely visible through the rain. As I rounded a bend, my headlights caught movement on the side of the road. A man, standing just beyond the white line, motionless in the rain. His clothes were dark, soaked through. His face was pale, his hair plastered to his forehead. He wasn't holding an umbrella. He wasn't hitchhiking. He was just standing there, watching the cars pass. A chill ran down my spine. I barely had time to process him before he disappeared into the darkness behind me. My hands tightened on the wheel. What the hell was he doing out here? There was nothing for miles. No houses. No gas stations. Just trees and road and rain. And then, about 15 minutes later, I saw him again. Standing by mile marker 153. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. Same soaked clothes. Same stillness. Same pale face turned toward the road. I drove past faster this time, my heart pounding. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, but the rain made it impossible to see anything. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe there were two men who looked alike. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe he had somehow walked 6 miles in the time it took me to drive 15 minutes. None of those answers made sense. And deep down, I already knew. It was the same man, and he had moved. I told myself I was imagining things, that the darkness and exhaustion were playing tricks on me, that there was no way that he could have gotten there so fast. Then, I saw him a third time. Mile marker 156. Standing closer to the road now. I didn't even get a good look at his face this time. I couldn't bring myself to. I kept my eyes forward, hands locked on the wheel, driving faster than was safe in the storm. The worst part? I knew I'd see him again. And I did. Mile marker 160. He was right at the edge of the road now. A step closer, and he would have been in the middle of my lane. My headlights hit his face directly, and for the first time, I saw his eyes. Wide, unblinking, empty, and he smiled. Not a normal smile, not a human smile. A slow, stretched-out grin, too wide, like his skin was barely holding his face together. I choked on my breath. My vision blurred for half a second. And when it cleared, he was gone. Just gone. Like he had never been there at all. I slammed my foot on the gas. I didn't care about the rain anymore. I just needed to get away. The last stretch of the road was a winding, uphill climb, twisting turns bordered by steep drop-offs. The kind of road you needed to take slow, even on a good day. Tonight, I didn't have a choice. I sped around the first bend, then the second, then the third. And then I saw him, standing in the middle of the road, directly in front of my car. I had no time to react. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming against the wet pavement. The car skidded, my headlights flashing across his face for a fraction of a second. And then I plowed right through him. I braced for the impact, for the sickening sound of my car hitting flesh and bone. But it never came. My car passed straight through him, like he wasn't there at all. And for half a second, just half a second, I saw his face right outside my window. His lips moved. I couldn't hear his voice, but I knew what he was saying. Slow down. Then, the road vanished. My car slammed into the guardrail. The impact threw me forward, my seatbelt cutting into my chest as the world flipped sideways. Metal screeched. Glass shattered. Then, silence. For a few long, painful seconds, I just sat there, my head throbbing, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The car had stopped moving. I was inches from the edge of the cliff. One more second. 1 more mile per hour. And I would have gone over. My fingers trembled as I gripped the wheel. I looked up, and in the rearview mirror, standing by mile marker 166, was the man, smiling, still, watching. Then, he turned and walked into the woods, and disappeared. I sat there for a long time, shaking, the rain dripping through my shattered windshield. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver whistled, shaking his head. "Damn," he muttered. "You're lucky, man. Few people make it out of this turn." I swallowed, my throat dry. "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the twisted guardrail. "This stretch of road's dangerous. There's a blind drop just up ahead, no lights, no signs. Get too much speed coming down, and you'll fly right over." He paused, glancing at my car. "If you hadn't hit the brakes, well, I've seen worse." I didn't say anything, because I knew. I hadn't stopped on my own. I hadn't saved myself. The man by the mile markers had. Or at least, he had tried. I never drove that road again, and I never checked the accident reports. Because some nights, when I'm alone on a quiet highway, I think about him, standing in the rain, waiting. And I wonder, how many others has he tried to save? And how many had ignored him?